It's that time of the year again, 2018 end of the year recap. Stay tuned, there are some shocking numbers that will surprise you. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto! Welcome to the final episode of Prime PPTV for 2018. I'm so glad you could join us here today before you get drunk and ring off the new year. Or celebrate in respectable adult manners. To each their own. But make sure you stay tuned to the end of this episode because it'll give you a better grasp of what exactly happened in the 2018 real estate market. In this week's episode, I have a lot of stats I've compiled for you from the entire year and will paint and hopefully allow you to understand exactly how the real estate market fared in 2018. But before I get started, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to Prime PPTV, the channel, for some more great content like this in 2019. So let's get started with somewhat of the ugly. The number of transactions are down in 2018. Year to date, we have significantly less amount of transactions. In the 416, we have about 28,500. Down 18%, I'm sorry, 15%, and 905, we're about 46,000, down 17%. Overall, as of GTA, we're about 74,000, overall down 16%. Now, you can probably thank the aftermath of the stress test and the lingering effects of the foreign buyer tax in early lingering months of 2018 for the down transactions. However, prices did not drop. I'll get into a comparison of prices later, but I want to look at what prices were at the start of 2018 and what they were at the end of 2018, because I always find it interesting. So in the 416, we started about 766,000 and we're up 76,000 to about 842,000. In the 905, we're about 718,000 to about 750, up only slightly at 32,000. In the GTA, we started at 736,000, we went up 51,000, and we ended up around $788,000. You can see that prices are going up despite what you may have read in the newspaper, especially in the 416, as we have been talking about all year long. We saw almost a 10% lift from the start of the year to the end of the year. Obviously, we had higher peaks and lower dips from seasonal changes, but overall, an increase in prices. Now, this next section, I've created some charts to help you illustrate a few points. At any point, if you wish to look at the chart fully, I'm going to shrink my face and you can pause the video to look at the chart. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe to the PPTV VIP mailings where I send this out to all my investors so they know exactly how to navigate the real estate investing world. A link to this mailing list can be found in the description below, okay? Now, each category of stats I've divided into the 416, the 905, and all of GTA as a whole for you. So continuing from what I was talking about for transactions, you can see here that the 416 started off fairly weak relative to the 2017 year. But as you'll be seeing in the next few charts as well, there was a switch flipped in the summer that changed everything. The summer of 2017 was the first major dip after the foreign buyer tax. So relatively, the market has recovered at least back to the status quo of 2017 in terms of transactions. Now in the 905, you can see exactly the same thing where the transactions were much stronger after the summer. In the 905, you can see that happening a little bit earlier than the 416. Overall, in the GTA, despite transactions being low, relative to the last 10-year stretch we've had, this is about normal. Well, actually, it's about above the last 10-year average, so nothing to freak out about. The only minor thing I'll point out to you that you may have noticed is that in November and likely December, when the stats come out, you'll see the transactions higher in 2017 than they are in 2019. This is because at the end of 2017, there was a mad scramble to close properties before the stress test came effect in the early 2018 years. Now that we have a fairly decent understanding of the number of transactions, let's look at price. Everyone's favorite stat. In August of 2017, that was the lowest 416 ever dipped to an average of 726,000. That was what you should have bought low. Since then, we're closing off at a year at 842,000, where the highest point we've seen was April 2017 for 943,000. We're not that far off from it actually right now, a little less than 10%, and we'll hit that peak again. And keep in mind, we had a 10% jump in the 416 from the start of 2018 until now. Price is up, transaction down, market's tightening. So if we see something like what we saw this year in 2018 in the 416, we'll be right back up at the peak of the market in 416. Interesting, right? So, as everyone knows, the 905 got absolutely decimated when the foreign buyer tax was introduced. The highest point was 926,000 in March of 2017, and the lowest was 719,000 at the start of this year in 2019. Prices have basically fluctuated slightly, but the 905 has been most of the year a buyer's market and fluctuated around the same price. Lots of inventory to choose from if you're a buyer, It's stagnated, but nowhere close to crashing as media is depicting, or even as I'm saying sometimes. Overall in GTA, when you have Toronto properties raising 10% and stagnating in the 905, we really get a messed up numbers when looking at the market as a whole. So that's why overall, above where we ended in 2017, it's not a bad thing, but ultimately I think this stat is a fairly useless one because it doesn't paint any picture. Now, the last thing we're going to look at is months of inventory. In the 4 and 6, we can see that the months in inventory is slowly decreasing. We saw a decent amount of supply at the start of the year, but things started heating up. Keep in mind, the absolute crazy peak in February 2017 when people were blindly submitting unconditional offers on properties they have never seen before. The months of inventory was 1.24. Closing out the year, we're at 1.52. We're getting pretty close. This can be attributed to a more pent-up buyer demand and fewer sellers listing their properties. And if this continues into 2019, expect the market to tighten up even more. The 905, on the other hand, is seeing the exact opposite. The months of inventory is the highest I've ever seen it in GTA, which is around 3 months right now. But keep in mind, this is still technically a seller's market, just not a Toronto seller's market. A seller's market is less than 4 or 5 months. The months of inventory is slowly starting to decrease, and there could be a sign of slight resurgence from the anecdotal advice and evidence that I've been hearing and seeing from speaking with other agents. However, calling it the 905 could be doing it a disservice, kind of like what we do with GTA, because large parts of the Peel region, Mississauga, Oakville, and some of Brampton is alive and well, whereas the York region is still incredibly weak, especially places like Newmarket, Stouffville, Aurora, and Richmond Hill. Durham is actually the best of all of them. So again, market by market is different, and it all comes down to price, as you thought. York region is the most expensive and the weakest, then Peel, and then Durham. Lastly, as a whole in GTA, the months of inventory is still fairly low, even by Toronto standards. We're just not getting enough supply for the sheer amount of people coming into Canada, and specifically this year. Couple that with the absurd amount of money and jobs coming to downtown core, get ready. We're going to see another spike. Well, I hope that gives you a good summary of what the heck happened in 2018. I suspect things will tighten up and revert back to the Toronto norm next year. Until next time, guys, Happy New Year, stay safe, and happy real estating. I'll see you in 2019.